And bear in mind that mockery, with this third sign, mockery is a really big part of how the perpetrator tries to keep tabs on the on the victim. And you know what? I think a lot of people who are adult also probably go through this to a certain extent. And don't forget that gaslighting is a sign of other disruptive behavior as well. So it's not just specific to child mistreatment. It encompasses many other psychological issues. So bear that in mind. And the fourth sign kind of goes with the first one, where physical contact is being established in order to enforce a sort of false trust, a very trusting bond between the child and the perpetrator, a bond that should not exist because of the perpetrator's own true motives. And this will include lots of boundary testing, like physical boundary testing, maybe touching, maybe verbally suggesting things. I wish I could explain more. Thank goodness I've never been in a situation like that when I was a child, other than being physically manhandled at least once, and when I was very, very, very young. And I still remember the man's face. However, my parents were both very close by, and thank God for that. And that was the extent of anything that's ever happened to me. But yeah, it would not be a pleasant thing for a child to go through. Many children who are latchkey children, and I'm saying that children from all walks of life, no matter how well cared for, they're latchkey children, just because that's the way our society has been operating in the past several decades. And so a perpetrator, though, will take advantage of that situation, automatically try to sniff out all the latchkey children in their community and try to establish bonds with those children, because those children are the ones that have more free time and are easiest to manipulate. Ultimately, the inappropriate behavior from the perpetrator it should not be taking place, and it can lead up to something very explicit. And in many cases I've heard about, it is an older teen that is the perpetrator. And so even though they're still often minors, that behavior is very, very, ugly and very disturbing. So, that's a very delicate matter. And I think that we should all be opened up to this, because if we aren't, we're just not going to look for it. And if we don't look for it, we won't be able to catch the signs of a perpetrator, right? So I'm saying that, I think that if we ever see something that is very suggestive of a child lure, for instance, a car stalling near an elementary school or near a park, way off hours that are not involved with school time or playtime in a park, like maybe at night, I would definitely report that. And over the past month, I have reported at least 55 car tags that are stalled in the middle of a school zone, like maybe 5-6 p.m., looking for children. You can just tell. And even though I'm never sure of how the context really is, I always report the tag to authorities. And sleep easier at night. So guys, this last and fifth sign is very harmful. It's very dangerous, and it's also very disturbing to me because I know in the past I've had at least 2 or 3 exes who have displayed this sort of behavior in the most extreme and violent manner toward me when I was an adult. So this is the expression of a very jealous and very outrageously possessive and controlling attitude toward the child by the perpetrator, especially around other family members, if that perpetrator is a family member, or friends. And this guys, it also went on in Amanda Todd's case. It includes sabotage, the spreading of images or false rumors about the child or the victim. This can happen to an adult just as easily as a child, but a child is helpless, right? Lies in order to keep the child alienated, in order to keep people in an accusatory position against the child. And a lot of the times, this is very misleading and false. And very, what could have been taken as a grain of salt is now made from a molehill into a great huge mountain. And the stories are usually quite false. So this behavior includes, as I just described before, the troublesome coach, or the idling car, or the hacking of social media accounts, and often trying to get that social media account suspended through lies and manipulative schemes. It's all horrendous. And yeah, I've been through that too. Excessive need to monitor that child's every step, every movement, every thought is really mind-boggling. In fact, the perpetrator will stop at no end to, that didn't make sense. He will proceed at all costs to indulge and continue and persist in this very obsessive compulsive behavior of manipulating the child's every move. And online hacking is a very, very disturbing and criminal extension of all this jealousy and controlling behavior. And so, yeah, hacking is very predominant, as is fraud. Hacking and fraud go together. And who are the perpetrators who are mostly involved in this? Very often, it's a child who is being exploited by an older adult for financial gain. So, credit card scams are very typical of child mistreating rings. And very often, some of these rings will teach the child how to trespass, how to steal visa statements, how to, get into bank accounts. I know that adults do this as well, but it's very typical for an adult to think it's so cute to teach a child how to steal. Yeah, even at 4 years old. it's so cute to see a child steal. Well, that's what people who inappropriately touch and mistreat children, that's what they like to say. And so, the most extreme scenario of such a motive would be to, in all of this controlling behavior, would be to completely and totally isolate this child or this victim by, completely cutting off contact from other friends and family with these manipulative and vicious lies, and also to sabotage and limit their relationships with the opposite gender. That would be the most, first and foremost, goal in the perpetrator's mind, regardless of their own gender, would be to limit the child's development of relationships with other people. And I have to stress that those relationships would be loving relationships, had it not been for interference with a criminal perpetrator. Yes, in some circumstances, I think that some of these cases that we've been hearing about in the media did stem from such abuse or mistreatment across the globe, overseas. For instance, when a young adult starts to travel or starts to go to university, then the lies will become even more predominant, because at that time, it's easier to control a person when they're away from their home base and their familiar circle of friends and family, right? So it's the time to, take the abuse and try to manipulate it in a way that will completely render the victim helpless. And so, a predator or somebody who indulges in thoughts about child mistreatment may not even be indulging in the most overt criminal of these behaviors that I have been trying to describe to you. And guys, it's very, very difficult to pinpoint a true manipulator, a true child perpetrator, because on the outside, they're all normalcy and smiles and a perfect picture of mental health. But it's not always the case, and we don't always have the means to measure those qualities appropriately. So it's so easy for us to be sucked in, fooled, and manipulated by the perpetrator. And let's face it, adults are the ones that the perpetrator has to fool the best. Am I not right? So I hope that you found some of this discussion, if not all of it, useful to you and enlightening. And I hope that you've enjoyed listening, although it wasn't quite pleasant. It's not a good theme. It's not a pleasant theme to talk about, but my focus is not a pleasant one. But I hope that you found it likable and helpful and enjoyable. And so I hope that you tune in for the second part, as well as other types of episodes on my channel. And I'll really talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Bye. with all of these criminal behaviors is the first and foremost goal to control that child's mind or that poor victim's mind. And it's like a bad sales scheme. And the mind control that goes on in this sort of crime is horrendous, guys. And you have to realize that nobody can change the past. Nobody can change how you think and feel about other people unless you experience that yourself. If you suspect somebody of trying to start a malicious rumor, put an end to it, or ask them, call them out, ask them to prove it. It's so widespread, especially online, that we have to be careful of exactly who we talk to and how we talk to those people, especially online, or people that we don't even know very well. So this brings us to the most extreme and the highest profile example of the Amanda Todd case. It's the best example that I can possibly think of that fits into this kind of discussion, because even though she doesn't fall into the appropriate category, my category of missing child, she did go missing for several hours after school here in my city, and she was found semi-conscious later, like maybe 4 or 5 hours later, by her own parent, her dad. And what was done to remedy the situation was very little, guys, very little. And I'm not saying this as a way to criticize. I'm just saying that's fact. And she was not appropriately dealt with by authorities, I think first and foremost because other children at the time were involved in that horrific attempt to ridicule her, to humiliate her, to taunt her. And I think a lot of it came from online images. I'm not going to sit here and point fingers at Amanda Todd or any of her classmates about the dangers of passing out online images, but I know, going from my own experience as someone who often chatted in rooms, and I shouldn't have done that there were so many pictures exchanged, and thank goodness for the longest time I didn't know how to do it. So I never did it. I may have done it once or twice, and I was sorry I did it because it didn't feel right. Facial images, okay, maybe the person on the other end might know who he's talking to. It served no purpose to me, and I kicked myself for doing that, but at the same time, I was able to stop right away. I did it once or twice, and I realized it was silly. At the time, it was very dangerous because there were no legal outlines defining the abuse of such activities online. And so I could have been a victim. I could have been. As for Amanda Todd, I think it started out innocently. On Facebook, chatting with friends. It started out very innocently, and then, something began to happen, and I'm going to get more into that in our next part. This is going to be in 2 parts. And so, but for now, I just want to say that Amanda Todd grew up right in the public eye of social media here on YouTube and on other social platforms as well. In fact, I think that she, you can still find her channel here on YouTube, and I have to say that she was the most charismatic and vivacious and lovely little child, and an amazing singer, And I think that she had, absolutely the sweetest disposition. And she was so innocent, guys. She was so innocent. And it breaks my heart to realize what she must have gone through. I know that when her story broke, I was just starting out again. I was returning to university and I was horrified. And I know that those times were pretty dangerous. I was very leery of anybody who I saw lurking around corners. I remember being stalked so heavily in those days. It was dangerous for me, an adult, to go to my own university campus and attend classes. Eventually, I had to stop. Though I have around $25,000 worth of scholarship, I can't bring myself at this point to return. It was a horrendous ordeal, and I was dealing mostly with adults, people who hung around the campus and shouldn't have been there. It was horrendous, guys. So if I went through that, I can only imagine what little Amanda Todd must have gone through. Well, needless to say, that evil force that took over Amanda Todd's life eventually and paralyzed her with fear started right here in my own city. Amanda became prey to the most vicious adult predators and child teasers who, they hated. They acted with hate. And they hacked into her social media to discredit her. And I think in my city, I do believe that there were some of her classmates who may have passed her photo around and tried to discredit her in that way. I think that was at the bottom of how it all began. And really, when I think of those children who taunted her, those juveniles, and put her in that ditch, I have a hard time believing that the extortionist in Netherlands had something to do with it. That's my problem with this case. And ultimately, we have to realize that he's now safely put away. But so what I'm saying is that her case has so many loose ends here and there, in my opinion. And my heart goes out to Carol Todd, her mother. And I wish I could talk to her. So guys, after she was taunted and abused and assaulted, I shouldn't say the word abuse, attacked, physically attacked by those juveniles, I think that what happened was she began to get threats online that she had to share more of herself. And while I believe that she became obsessed with staying online and trying to control what was going on with her pictures. She was tormented, guys. She was mistreated in the most vile and vicious way with all sorts of people. There's no use. I can't bring myself to pin the blame on one person. Obviously, many different people share the blame for what happened to her on and offline. So what happened, guys, is it's a little sketchy for me to rebuild the initial stage of this case. However, while she was living in my city and attending that school a very short distance away from my home, right here in my own neighborhood, she was undergoing various types of mistreatment online, and she was getting blackmailed. And so she began to share more of herself And what happened was she was then reported by these same perpetrators who may have put her in the ditch, and they reported her to the police. I'm not sure if this is what actually happened, but when she was living in this city, she was living with her dad. Her mom was in BC, Canada. And I don't know how that actually pans out. I don't know if the father was going to be moving to BC later and they were just waiting to finish out Amanda's school year. I don't know anything about it. But mom was in BC and dad was here in my city. And so it was 4 a.m. one morning when who should come knocking on Amanda Todd's home door? Well, guys, it was the police. As I said before, I'm not sure I understand the complete context of why they were there. I'm thinking that maybe whoever it was, I don't even know if it was really the police, whoever it was, probably thought that Amanda Todd was home alone at 4 a.m. And so maybe that's why they were coming to check on her, if they really were police. I'm not sure that I know. I don't think that showing up at a private home at 4 a.m. in the morning after a child has been abused and assaulted by classmates, I don't think that's an appropriate step, but then that's me. I don't know. I'm taking an uneducated guess, and I'm not trying to criticize whoever it was that acted on impulse, but it was a wrong impulse and the wrong way to act on. I think it could have been dealt with in a much more efficient manner had it been at maybe, like, say, 6 p.m., 7 p.m. in the evening when the father was home and conscious, not asleep. Who isn't asleep at 4 a.m.? Well, me sometimes, but normally we're all pretty much asleep at 4 a.m. So what were they trying to accomplish by going to Amanda's home? Maybe they wanted to assess the real situation. I don't know, but with thousands, like 10,000 kids missing in my province, I don't think this is the way to go about it. You don't fix a problem at 4 a.m. in the morning. Anyway, that's just my take. I don't know. I'm just saying it's a weirdo way to go by showing up at a child's home, unless they were deliberately called from someone at the home about a disturbance or something, or a break-in. I don't think it's appropriate for police to, or people identifying themselves as police, to show up. She could have been abducted, for all I know. Guys, whenever you see someone trailing a group of children, whether on foot or on car, or trying to, watch and be set, I think it's weird for, say, a service person driving a service truck to park in front of a school, whether during school hours or not, and just sit there. I think it's so weird, and nobody does anything. I think it's weird. So, I hope that if you see something that you're not sure of, try to report it, because if you don't, it's just going to get worse and worse, especially in my province where there are so many missing kids that vanish. And mind you, a good deal of them vanish by the hands of their own parents or own family members or people that they know very well. And so it's not always that random stranger, if you get my drift. Still, it's weird that so many of these situations are going on a daily basis, and police are right there and nobody stops it. we just have to redefine what's weird in our system and what's not. It's really hard to define what's not. Let me put it that way. So I hope that you found some of this discussion, if not all of it, useful to you and enlightening. And I hope that you've enjoyed listening, although it wasn't quite pleasant. You know, it's not a good theme. It's not a pleasant theme to talk about, but my focus is not a pleasant one. But I hope that you found it likable and helpful and enjoyable. And so I hope that you tune in for the second part, as well as other types of episodes on my channel. And I'll really talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening and watching.